stopped at stoichiometry. Okay, so I'll briefly talk about it and then move on to other topics in thermodynamics. So what we discussed is that if you have a stoichiometric mixture, okay, what do I mean by stoichiometric mixture is that, sorry, you have reactant and oxidant in such a proportion that after the reaction both are consumed, all the reactants are consumed, fuel and oxygen both are consumed. Okay, then this mixture is called stoichiometric mixture. Okay, and for a stoichiometric mixture, what do? We find what is the ratio between mass of fuel and oxidizer. Okay, so if I take 1 mole of methane, this is the example what I used last class, right? 1 mole of methane, it requires 2 moles of oxygen to burn it completely. Okay, and this is the ratio what we get. So if all reactants are in exact proportion, where all reactants are completely consumed at the end of the reaction, then it is called stoichiometric. So this again I'm just repeating what we discussed in the last class. So when you have when you're taking a stoichiometric ratio, this is what fuel to oxygen oxidizer ratio you get for stoichiometric mixture, and this is what for your actual fuel, whatever the proportion you have in your device. Then based on that you define the equivalence ratio, and if equivalence ratio is less than 1 it is fuel in, more than 1 it is fuel rich, and equal to 1 means it will be equal to stoichiometric. This is clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now this is how we define equivalence ratio, fuel to oxygen oxidizer ratio of the actual fuel divided by stoichiometric ratio. Now if I reverse this, okay, both this number if I inverted, so instead of taking fuel to oxygen ratio, I can take oxygen to fuel ratio like this. Then the number will be same, right? Both numerator and denominator are reversed. Instead of F by O, I am taking O by F, and same here. So the whole fraction remains unchanged. Okay, so these are two ways in which you can define. Either you have the fuel to oxygen ratio or oxygen to fuel ratio. Then you can define the equivalence ratio. Okay, now let us talk about air as an oxidizer. Okay, most of the engines or gas turbine engines, ICE engines, we generally use air. Okay, now what is the composition of air? Air is made of 21% oxygen and 79% nitrogen by weight. So in molar concentration, I will say what I can do is I can divide this, okay, this number 1 by this. I want to make this 1. So I'll divide throughout by 0.21. So if I divide 1 by 0.21, I will get this. This will be 1, and 0.79 by 0.21 is 3.76 N2. Okay. So this is the composition of air. So when I now define equivalence ratio with respect to air, so I will not say fuel by oxidizer, I will say fuel by air ratio. Okay. So this will be used in your calculations. When you, let's say I have to calculate what is the equivalence ratio for a given fuel in when it is burning in air, then you will use this proportion. Okay, let us take an example. Let's say that I am burning a hydrocarbon in air. Okay, so what is the composition of air? O2 plus 3.76 N2. From where it is coming? From the last slide. O2 plus 3.76 N2. Okay, and let us say that it is a general hydrocarbon. So it could be methane, propane, or anything. To keep it general, what we have done is we have used X and Y as subscript for CNH. So if it is methane, it is X is 1 and Y is 4. So if you write a balanced reaction such that again it is a stoichiometric ratio, all the fuels are getting, all the reactants are getting consumed. Okay, which reactant is not getting consumed? Can anyone tell me?
Nitrogen.
Correct. Nitrogen will not react. Generally, we assume nitrogen not to react, but as we move along, we see in extreme situations in a gas turbine, nitrogen also dissociates to form nitrogen oxides. But for our discussion, unless it is mentioned, we will assume that nitrogen is not reacting. So we are writing a balance equation. CXHY will give you X moles of CO2 plus Y by 2 moles of hydrogen plus 3.76 A remains unreacted. So now by simple algebra you can see that A will be equal to X plus Y by 4. Okay, A moles of oxygen. So if you look at, if you balance oxygen moles in the LHS and RHS, you'll see A moles are here and X moles are here plus Y by 4 moles are here. So we get A is equal to X plus Y by 4. Now for this reaction for hydrocarbon combustion, we'll define fuel by fuel air ratio, stoichiometric ratio as mass of fuel by mass of air, and again this is a balanced reaction, so it will be stoichiometric ratio. So I get 1.4.76 A, which is the ratio 3.76 plus 1, 4, and ratio of molecular weight of fuel and oxygen. So this will give you fuel to air stoichiometric ratio. Or I can say mass of air, can take mass of air and mass of fuel. If it is a flowing device, you will take m dot. If it is open device. So this will be equal to this ratio what we have got here. Reverse of that. This is fuel to air, this is air to fuel. Okay, now what is the use? Why do we need to calculate equivalence ratio at all? Okay, so let us look at a actual or practical device. So for example, this is a schematic of a gas turbine engine, the engine which powers your aeroplane. Okay, now once we design the geometry, once we fix that this will be the diameter of this intake, this will be the compression ratio, this is finally the diameter of the dimensions of your combustor. Once we fix all that and we know what are the operating conditions, okay, then we know how much air will be flowing through it for a particular condition. Now based on that, we need to decide how much fuel has to flow. Okay, because air is fixed by operating conditions and geometry. So fuel condition we need to specify using equivalence ratio. What is the equivalence ratio we want? It will not be stoichiometric, it is generally very lean for this type of operation. So based on that we decide how to govern your fuel flow rate. Okay, now let us talk about enthalpy of formation. So basically when you want to calculate how much heat will be produced or what is the temperature that is reached, then we need to consider enthalpy. So what is enthalpy of formation? Or let us first, enthalpy of formation will define in a minute. Let us first talk about standardized enthalpy. Okay, let us say I have some species at temperature T. So how I can define the standardized enthalpy? It will be the sum of enthalpy of formation plus sensible enthalpy. So enthalpy of formation will be defined as a reference temperature and reference pressure. Okay. From that temperature and pressure to bring to T, the given temperature. Okay. We'll see some examples. So the heat required to heat it from T ref to T will give you sensible enthalpy. Now enthalpy of formation will be associated with chemical bonds. So when you do some reaction, when a fuel is burnt, some bonds are broken, some new bonds are formed. That will discuss in detail in next chapter. So we'll in this chapter we'll go through some calculations how these bonds are breaking. What is the basically energy associated with those bonds? Okay, and standard reference state we define as 1 atmosphere and 298 Kelvin. This is the standard given in tables. So you can look at the back of your book. You will have a table for enthalpy of formation at standard reference state. So this is what they are referring to. Okay. Now for elements which are in the naturally occurring state at standard temperature and pressure, you will say that enthalpy of formation is 0. For example, oxygen at atmospheric pressure and temperature, standard temperature. What is the naturally occurring state for oxygen at room temperature? Anyone?
Gas.
Right. So we are talking about gaseous oxygen. This is also important. We are talking about solid species. What is the state of the species? It is solid, liquid, or gas. So naturally, oxygen occurs as a gas at standard reference temperature. So I will say that enthalpy of formation is 0. If I talk about liquid oxygen, then it will be different. Okay. Now the enthalpy of formation is 0 only for the oxygen molecule. Okay, not for the oxygen atom. So if you talk about atom, basically what you are doing, you are taking this molecule and you are breaking into two. Now here your bond dissociation energy will come into play. So total bond energy is spent in breaking these two atoms. So one atom will be having half of the value of bond dissociation energy. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let us look at this equation in a graph, what we have already discussed. So standardized enthalpy of at temperature T. Okay, let us say I have O atom at this temperature, around 4000 Kelvin. So this total is the standardized enthalpy of temperature T. From here, from reference state to that temperature, that is a standardized enthalpy at 4000 Kelvin. Now what is the enthalpy of formation? Enthalpy of formation will be, okay, here I am taking reference temperature at 4000 Kelvin. So enthalpy of formation is from here to here. Sorry. Enthalpy of formation is always taken at reference temperature. So at reference temperature, this is the enthalpy plus this much is the sensible heat I have to provide to heat it to attain this temperature. Okay, so enthalpy of formation is actually coming from here. So at the reference, let us say this is at the reference temperature 298 K, right? So this will give you your enthalpy of formation at reference state plus how much extra energy is required to heat. This is your sensible heat or sensible enthalpy. So their sum will give you the total enthalpy of standardized enthalpy at reference temperature, at not reference temperature, at temperature T. Is this clear? So sorry, I forgot to mention this y-axis will show you enthalpy and this x-axis shows you temperature. So generally we talk about oxygen at, here we define the, sure. So y-axis shows you enthalpy, okay, standardized enthalpy, and x-axis shows you temperature, right? So when we define, if you go to the last slide, when we define enthalpy of formation, then we define it at the reference state 298 K. Okay. Now we have, this is the enthalpy of formation. What you see here, 249.195 kilojoule per kilomole. Okay. So why is this not zero? Why it is this value? Can anyone tell me? Oxygen is at room temperature. So why it should have such a big value? Why it is not zero?
Sir, it is atomic oxygen, not diatomic.
Correct. Correct. So if you are talking about atomic, it is here. Okay, this will follow that curve. So enthalpy of oxygen will change with respect to temperature. Why it is changing? Because we have to heat, we are heating it, right? To increase the temperature. So oxygen molecule will follow this path. Okay, this all is sensible heat. From here to this line, it is sensible heat. Heat is what we are using to raise the temperature. So this line is, this curve is for oxygen molecule. This is for oxygen atom. Okay, and the difference is bond energy. So oxygen atom, this is the amount of energy I need to spend if I want to create oxygen atom at 298 K. Right? Now I want to heat it. I want this oxygen atom to be at 4000 K. Okay. So I have reached up to this level in 298 K, plus I will add this extra amount of heat to get the temperature of 4000 K. So this is the final state, and this is the total energy required to create oxygen atom at 4000 K. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will just repeat once. So this is the total energy required to create oxygen atom at 4000 K, which is composed of two parts. One part is energy required to create oxygen atom at 298 K plus energy required to heat it. So it will follow this path. Let me clear it again. So what path it will follow? Initially, let us say I have oxygen molecule at 298 K here, Tref. Okay. I provide energy and I don't mind about this. This is problem with PowerPoint. So I created oxygen atom at reference temperature and then I started heating it. So the temperature will start to raise and finally I will get something here. Okay. Fine. So this is the logic that we'll use in calculations. So once you look at some numericals, I hope it will be more clear. Okay. Now let us look at enthalpy of reaction or enthalpy of combustion. So what is happening here is basically, let us say you have an open system. Okay. So reactants are entering here, fuel plus oxidizer. Okay, fuel or mixture. And products are leaving. Okay. Now we are saying, for defining this or talking about ideal condition, I am saying that complete combustion. Okay. So what you can, without looking at this, what you can assume by looking at this statement, complete combustion, what would be the state of reactants while entering? Yes.
Gaseous, mostly.
Yeah, gaseous state. Anything about their composition? What is the percentage or proportion in which they are mixed? It is not necessary gaseous state, because I can also have a liquid fuel. It will evaporate and burn. That is also possible. But when I am saying complete combustion, what is the only case where complete combustion is possible?
Sir, fuel and oxygen is in stoichiometric ratio.
Correct. So only when we have stoichiometric ratio, we can say that there will be complete combustion. Otherwise, either fuel will be left or oxygen will be left. Right? So this is the model that we assume for calculations. So we say that there is a, let us say, open system. there is flow of stoichiometric fuel air mixture going inside, it is burning inside, and then products are coming out. Okay, and there is some heat loss. So how come I am talking about heat loss? Because I am saying that products are at standard state conditions. So I will say that these are reactants or initially at standard state, let us say 300 Kelvin. They did some reaction and they come out at 300 Kelvin. Now how is that possible? You are burning something, so that will increase the temperature, right? How can I write standard state? Okay. Okay, let us go that in next slide. So basically what I was trying to highlight is we are assuming that heat interactions are also involved, heat transfer. Okay. So let's say that we have delta HR. This is the change in enthalpy. Now this will be equal to QCV. How much heat is produced? Okay, QCV is heat produced or heat transfer from the control volume. And that will be equal to difference between enthalpy of product and reactant. Okay, so by looking at the reaction, let us say this is a combustion, which H will be more? H product will be more or H reactant will be more?
Product.
Product will be more?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let us explore that more in detail. So this is the plot which shows x-axis shows your temperature, y-axis shows your enthalpy. Okay, so you can see H of reactant is here, H of product is here. So which one is more now? If I talk about the same temperature, let us say 298 K, which one is more, reactant or product?
Reactant.
Reactant. Why is that so? So basic, yes.
It's
It is more positive value.
Correct. So when you are okay, when we are burning fuel, okay, so we have some molecules at the fuel and oxidizer level, reactant level. When you burn, then you get more stable products which have higher bond energies. That will be what we see as a heat. Breaking and making of new bonds, we see some heat is getting released. Okay. Now that heat will get released when, yes.
Yes, sir.
Question? Your voice is breaking. Do one thing, can you just, yes. Sorry?
Sir,
Do one
it
thing,
is
can
an
you just type
exothermic
your
reaction.
question. Correct. So combustion is always combustion is exothermic, right? What was your question? I am not clear again.
He answered
Nothing,
the
sir.
previous
I was-
question, sir. You asked that why it was more.
Do one thing, just please
Delta
type your voice is not clear. Type your message. Hello. I am not able to hear Shiansh. Please just type your message. I will reply your question. Are you here? Okay, negative enthalpy means exothermic. Yes, correct. That's what we are coming into. So that's all you wanted, or any other question? That's all. Good. I would encourage you to interact. That's good. You people are also talking. Then the class will be interesting. Okay. So what he told correctly, that will have exothermic reaction. So enthalpy of product has to be lower than that of reactant. Okay, then only we see a positive heat release. And this calculation is made using this bond dissociation energies. Okay, we'll see how to use that energy. So basically reactants are at 298 Kelvin. This is the enthalpy of reactant. This is the enthalpy of product. Let us say these two numbers are given to you. So when you want to find the heat of reaction, you will simply take this and you will subtract this. So you will get enthalpy and there are some different names to when we talk about enthalpy heat of reaction. Let us look into that. So I don't want you to get confused. So basically heat of combustion delta Hc will be numerically equal to heat of enthalpy of reaction, but with opposite sign. Okay, so enthalpy of reaction is negative. It is minus 802, right? But when you say heat of reaction, how much heat is produced? Then I give the same number but positive. I'll say that this much kilojoules of heat is released. So that is, so this delta Hc is a positive value. Okay, opposite sign positive because enthalpy of reaction is negative. You have seen in the last slide, right? Enthalpy of reaction is negative, hence it is an exothermic reaction. And hence heat of combustion will be positive, what we have just told. Okay, now there are two heating values. Okay, when we say heating value, we have two. One will be upper and one will be lower heating value. Okay, now what is the difference between them? When do we say higher or lower? When I can get pen. Okay, so basically you see now, let us go back to, okay, so when you are burning a hydrocarbon, or let us say you are burning a hydrogen fuel also, so what you see at the end product, you see water is also there, right? So now water could be in vapor form or it could also get condensed somewhere, right? So there are two possibilities when you are talking about water. So by considering those two possibilities, we define higher heating value and lower heating value. So what is the difference? When you calculate this delta Hc, considering that in the products that water has condensed, it has condensed to liquid water, then you will get higher heating value. And when you say that water is still in vapor form, it is not condensed, then we say that we get lower heating values, LHV. Okay. And what is the difference between these two? Anyone? What is the numerical difference? Number wise, when you do calculation, number wise the difference will be latent heat of vaporization. Right? Is this clear?
Sir, can you repeat this again?
Sure. So as you have seen, we are talking about burning of fuel. Okay. Generally for all hydrocarbons, we will also have hydrogen in the fuel. Hydrogen will burn and form water. So when we are doing this calculation, when we are talking about enthalpy, we need to consider whether the water that is produced, water is in liquid form or gaseous form, vapor form. Right, there are two possibilities. Either there is water vapor or we assume that water has condensed somewhere. So water is in liquid form. So what difference will it make? So if it is in liquid form, okay, then it will also release the latent heat. Okay, you can imagine when you are talking about the enthalpy of product, then water vapor will have, which will have higher enthalpy, water or water liquid or water vapor?
It will be water vapor is unstable, so it must be
Yes,
liquid.
it will not, it is not like right to say unstable, but I can say that liquid is more stable at standard conditions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so natural state will be to have liquid water, and if I want to produce vapor, I need to heat it. So vapor needs extra heat, right? So if I extract that, if somehow I take heat from vapor, it will become liquid. So that is what is being highlighted here. So when you do calculation, if you assume that all water is liquid, then you have higher heating value. If you assume that all water is vapor, then I have lower heating value. Because we are putting some energy in the water, which can be extracted to heat some other object of interest.
Yes, sir. It is clear now.
Fine?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Moving on. Okay, let us now define an important concept which is called adiabatic flame temperature. Okay. Now, let us say that I have reactant, I burnt it, and product is formed. So my assumption is that there is no, the system is insulated. Okay, so basically the assumption is that there is no heat loss or heat gain from the surrounding. Whatever the temperature increases because of combustion, that temperature is maintained. So that temperature will be called adiabatic flame temperature, assuming adiabatic conditions, right? Now we can define that in two ways. Either we can say that we have a constant volume process or constant pressure process. Let us have a look. So let's say I have a closed and rigid box. So this will not deform, and this is also insulated, right? So initially I have some initial temperature and pressure, which will give you the enthalpy or internal energy of reactant. Now what I do, I just put a spark plug, right? This will react and it will form products at some temperature and pressure. Now this temperature will be called adiabatic temperature. Okay, because assuming there is no heat loss to the surrounding. Fine. So this is what, constant volume or constant pressure?
Volume.
Constant volume.
Constant volume, right? So this is how we define adiabatic flame temperature at constant volume. Now this U will be same. Okay, U of reactant and U of product will be same. When you define U at T adiabatic and this reactant will be at T initial. So this U is same because there is no heat interaction, right? There is no heat transfer with the surrounding and there is no work done. So by first law, your energy remains constant. But still we are seeing increase of temperature. How is that possible? Anyone? I am saying there is no heat loss, but change in temperature. So is the first law valid or not valid? First law of thermodynamics. Yes?
Sir, there is pressure change too.
Okay. But involve work done.
It is work out the reaction heat itself. That's causing the temperature.
Yeah, we are hitting the reaction, but where is the energy coming from?
Molecules that change
Correct.
bondings.
So when we talk about the first law, in especially in case where chemical reactions are taking place, then we need also to consider that fuel are having some molecular energy, chemical energy, let's say. If there is no reaction, then this is not possible. You cannot change some phase like this without doing any reaction. Okay. So in combustion, what is basically happening is your chemical energy stored in the fuel is getting converted to heat energy in reactant, right? And first law is valid. No energy has come from outside. Inside only the chemical energy is getting to heat. That's all. Is this clear? Or not?
Yes, sir.
Fine. So when there is no heat loss, we define the temperature attained as adiabatic flame temperature for constant volume. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. It has higher chemical energy and it has lower chemical energy but higher heat energy, higher temperature. Okay, now what if pressure is kept constant? So let us say we have a piston cylinder arrangement, okay, and we allow the piston to move freely. Then pressure remains constant and temperature changes from T initial to T adiabatic. And this is your adiabatic flame temperature for constant pressure. Now here, what is the difference between these two? This one and previous slide. Can anyone tell me?
That is work done.
Correct. So earlier I was talking about U because there is no work done. Now I need to consider H because work done is also involved. So next question, which adiabatic flame temperature is higher? Constant volume or constant pressure?
Volume.
So for constant volume, there is no work involved. Okay, all the energy is going to heat the product. So that will be higher. And constant pressure will do some PdV work. So temperature will be slightly lower than constant volume. Fine. You all agree with this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Now let us look at how your adiabatic flame temperature varies with equivalence ratio. So you can see in the x-axis equivalence ratio is shown. Okay, so one is basically for your stoichiometric and this side goes rich, more fuel. This side goes lean, less fuel. And this is y-axis shows adiabatic flame temperature in Kelvin. So generally you have, now these are the different fuels given. Methane, propane, all hydrocarbons are there. Hydrogen is there. CO is there. CO also you can burn to form CO2, right? So what you can see from this plot is that near to the stoichiometric ratio, okay, roughly around somewhere, let's say 1.1, you get a peak, which is the highest flame temperature you will get. Okay. Now that flame temperature is getting dropped both when you go lean or when you go rich. Can anyone tell me why?
Because some of the reactant is remaining in both the cases, not complete combustion.
Correct. So only in this on this line you will see complete combustion. Here we are getting the maximum temperature. While if you go this side or that side, either fuel will be remaining or oxygen will be remaining. Then the temperature is getting lowered. Is this clear to everyone? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So please keep me telling whether you are clear or not. Then only I will go forward. Okay. Let us talk about Bunsen burner. If let us say I assume that there is no heat loss, it is at adiabatic. Theoretically, you can assume it is at adiabatic conditions. So what is the maximum temperature this flame can attain? How much? Let us say I'm burning methane. Okay, how much? What is the peak temperature that a Bunsen burner can achieve?
As shown in the previous graph, that we are something
Yes.
around.
So, what do you mean? Adiabatic flame temperature, right? If I assume loss or heat transfer, I will be ending up with adiabatic flame temperature. Okay. Another question, whether it is constant pressure or constant volume. Why not constant volume? There are two types of flame temperature, right? But we defined either at constant pressure and constant volume. So which one will be for a Bunsen burner flame? Anyone? Just now we have discussed. So I am also telling you the answer that it is constant pressure. But why not constant volume? Does the volume change or it remains constant? Yes, you are heating something. So volume will change or it will be remaining constant. You are heating something at constant pressure. Now tell me, what will happen to volume?
It will change.
Change to what? Increase or decrease?
Increase generally.
Correct. So whenever you heat any gas, it will increase in volume. Gases expand on heating, right? So it cannot be constant volume temperature. It has to be constant pressure. And what is the proof? How you can be sure that it is expanding? So this is a flow visualization done by some group. So what you can see is streamlines are spreading out. This is an actual flame, actual Bunsen burner flame, and this line shows the streamlines. Okay, they have tracked using some visualization. They have done some laser imaging. So what you can see is the streamline which is coming straight. Now it is expanding. It is going out. And anyway, you can see in spherical propagation. I may show you some videos where you can see that this burned gases are expanding. That is very obvious actually. So fine. Moving on. So we in this slide we also had one curve for CO. We also defined the adiabatic flame temperature for CO. Now let us talk about CO oxidation of CO. Okay, we generally talk about CO plus oxygen gives rise to CO2. We talk about the forward reaction. We are interested in burning of this. Okay, but actually when we go to next chapter, when we talk about chemical kinetics and all, what you will realize is that it is actually an equilibrium. Okay, both forward and back reactions are there. At any given temperature, you will also have a scenario where CO2 is also breaking down. This will be formed and this will also break down. This will go on backward side. Okay. So both forward and backward reaction are going on. But in general, what you will see is backward reaction is almost negligible. So let us say 1 million molecules of CO2 are formed, 1000 moles are formed and 0.1 moles are breaking. Something like that. So it is like 1000 or million times more favorable to form this rather than breaking this in general. Okay. So that's why when we do calculations or when we talk about combustion, we mostly consider this reaction. We tend to neglect this. But in certain conditions, this becomes non-negligible. Okay, this also we need to consider or account for. That we'll see. We'll talk about in later slides what conditions are that, but let us say that we need to consider this. Okay. Now, if let us say that this is dissociating, if CO2 is breaking down into this, then it will also affect the temperature, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So the final, when this reaction is non-negligible, it will be still much lesser than the forward reaction, but let us say it is not almost zero, it is slightly higher than zero. Then we'll also consider this. We'll do some more calculations, and then that will help us to find final temperature. It will not be adiabatic flame temperature, because for adiabatic there are two assumptions. For adiabatic flame temperature, we assume that there is no heat transfer and all the reactants have become product. So what do we do for this case? We consider this equilibrium. We say that if I assume complete forward reaction, at the end of the reaction I will have 0 moles of this, 0 moles of oxygen, and n moles of CO2. This is the ideal case which I want to achieve. Now let us say there is some dissociation. So I have n into alpha moles of CO, n alpha by 2 of this, and n into 1 minus alpha. Okay, because this is going back, so 1 minus alpha of CO2. This is basically n minus n alpha, which can be written, n can be taken out. So let me write it down. So let us say n moles have dissociated. So n minus n alpha, which is written like this. Is it fine? This I
Yes.
you might have studied in class 12th chemistry. Okay. So I can determine what is the composition at equilibrium. What I need to know what is alpha. Okay, if you know alpha, you know what are the composition. So the next question is, how do we determine alpha, or what criteria can I use? Okay, so let us say I have not about combustion. Let us say I have any reaction, any chemical equilibrium, and I want to find the equilibrium concentration. What are the species? So what is the most obvious tool from, let us say, from thermodynamics point of view? What law can you use to determine equilibrium composition? Any guess? First law, second law?
Sir, second law.
How?
Sir, because second law states the e- entropy. That entropy means in which direction the reaction is going to, which is favorable. So
Okay.
when there is an equilibrium, there will be no change in, there is no favor to any direction. So we can use that theorem in this way.
Yeah, very good. So at equilibrium, your entropy will be what? Minimum or maximum?
It will be minimum.
It will be maximum. You have almost correct. You have said. Let me explain. So at equilibrium, you have, let us say here, your entropy is at this point. So if you go to forward or backward direction, your entropy is changing. So what will be the second law? What is the nature trying to do? Talk about second law. It is natural for any system to attain increase entropy, right? Naturally, entropy can increase; it will not decrease.
Yes, sir. It will increase. I was
Right?
wrong. Yes.
So you have answered correctly. We are considering second law, and what we try to maximize this entropy. Okay, we try to achieve this point where ds by d alpha is 0. The slope is 0 here. That will give you maxima. Everyone is clear?
Yes, sir.
So,
Okay. Now, how do I find entropy? So basically, I'm talking about a mixture. So I'll take entropy of each component and I will add that. So I'll take the number of moles and entropy of that component. Let us say CO2. So at equilibrium, what is the equilibrium composition? Let's go back here. So CO2 I have n into 1 minus alpha. This is n alpha and this is n alpha by 2. Just remember this. So when we calculate entropy, what I'll do? 1 minus alpha into entropy of CO2, alpha of entropy of CO and alpha by 2 for oxygen. So this will give you entropy of the mixture, and then we'll see how to maximize it to get this point. Okay, so these are for 2-3 species. Now if you have more than one species, okay, another, you can just take a summation of all the species involved. Now another interesting point is that entropy is also dependent on temperature, right? CPDT. Let us say I'm talking about constant pressure reaction. So CP will also change with temperature, as you have seen in the last class, right? See, we are talking about large temperature changes. Let us say I'm going to delta T is 2000, of the order of 2000 Kelvin, 2000, 2500 like that. So there will be an appreciable change in CP. When you talk about small changes in temperature, then we can neglect that. But when you have large changes, then you need to, basically what you do, integrate. Take CP at different temperatures and then integrate along this path. Okay, so that is how you can calculate entropy. Now what are the other, okay, let us look at an example. So let's say that this is the entropy as a function of 1 minus alpha. Okay, alpha or 1 minus alpha, whatever you can take. So when you change, this is basically this plot. This is what is shown in that plot. This is a little bit exaggerated to show you the peak. This is the plot actually looks. So here is the peak actually. Okay. So this is your entropy maximum, and this will give you equilibrium composition, and this is what temperature you will have. So we have entropy variation with alpha and we have temperature variation with alpha. Now we find out what is the S max, and there we have the equilibrium temperature. Is this clear?
Sir.
Fine. This is exactly what we have discussed in this slide. Only some actual numbers are put up. That's all. Okay. Now let us look at something interesting here. So let us say these are the CO mole fraction. Okay, composition of, we are talking about equilibrium, how this CO changes with respect to pressure. Okay, and these different curves are for different temperatures. Okay, do not, for the moment, let us forget about it. Let us talk about one curve. Let us say we have this curve. Okay, and this is the reaction what we are considering. CO2 is getting dissociated to CO plus half of O2. Okay, so have you heard of Le-Chatelier's principle? Can anyone tell me what is that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, can you tell me what is Le-Chatelier's principle?
Sir, it was like we calculate. Sir, I was forgetting the term, but it was like we calculate just like equilibrium constant. We calculate the product and reactance ratio, and if it is greater than 1, the action moves forward, and if and this it is like this type of.
Okay, so what is the physics involved, or in simple terms, if I want to explain Le-Chatelier's principle for equilibrium, what I can say? Okay, we are actually running out of time. Stop for today. Tomorrow we'll continue on this. Okay, any questions? What we have discussed?
Sir, reverse combustion means we can make fuel again from combustion product.
Okay.